I grew up with my mom listening to Dennis Prager, and whatever you might think of him, he once said that he finds good more interesting than evil. And that idea has always stuck with me. This year's Superman almost does a really good job exploring goodness, virtue, power, responsibility, and the human condition. But frustratingly, it falls short and doesn't manage to get much beyond fun comic book movie. When it comes to movies, I think they bring out the dad in me sometimes. I get annoyed when they don't live up to their potential. I'm like, no, Superman, I'm not mad. I am disappointed. Superman opens with a title crawl about things that have happened in time periods divisible by 3. The final event listed is Superman losing a fight to someone called the Hammer of Baravia. And we see the aftermath as he falls to ice near the Fortress of Solitude. Krypto gets him inside, and the Superman robots start helping him. I like the Superman robots, a mainstay from the comics, but how they show up here bothers me. The robots will outright say, "We have no feelings, we do not actually care about you," type of things. This in itself isn't necessarily a problem. I actually think there's a good message in there about not ascribing humanity to our tools, even though a lot of tech companies these days would prefer that you did. I am, however, bothered that the movie is going to try and have it both ways, with a later scene or two showing the Superman robots dying in a really sad light, and late in the movie, one of the robots wanting to have a name rather than a number. This might start us on the crux of the issue. This movie is muddled. Most of the messages and ideas in this movie are muddled. From a minor thing like, should we actually care about the robots? To major things like, should Superman intervene in world conflicts? The ideas are brought up, they are addressed, but I just don't think they're actually seriously explored. It's philosophical key jangling, or to put it another way, which I sadly think might reflect on James Gunn, it's that sort of edgy kid that thinks they're smart, throwing out an idea, and then thinking that because they asked a question without an easy answer, it's enough to prove how smart they are, and they'll leave it up to the people they want to feel superior to develop the ideas. Again, though, what frustrates me is that they do bring up the questions, and it is interesting. And since I've said some harsh things, it's time for me to at least do a reverse praise sandwich and say there's one idea that was well developed. Spoilers from here on out. It's just kind of a shame that they had to character assassinate Jor and Lara Van L in order to do it. And I do actually like this beat. It's often said by comic book fans that Bruce Wayne is a mask for Batman, while Superman is the mask for Clark Kent. So having a major theme of the movie be that Clark or Superman, I guess would be appropriate to say, identifies more as human than as Kryptonian is nice to see. I've always considered one of the major and often very overlooked themes of Superman stories to be humility. Humility, perhaps being true to itself, is a generally overlooked and underappreciated virtue in modern society. Superman is the Man of Steel, and also the Man of Tomorrow. That last one has echoes of the Confucian Junzi, or the New Soviet Man, and Superman itself sounds a lot like Nietzsche's Übermensch. Superman doesn't see himself that way, though. Even though, for the most part, he has every reason to. He sees himself as Clark Kent, just another guy trying to do the right thing. His powers are a responsibility, not something he can use for his own self-gratification. So this movie is great then. It gets the humble human Superman and puts him on the screen, right? Well, that's the frustrating thing. Often, yes. And David Cornsweet really does a great job. But Superman is also the last son of Krypton, and often in other iterations we see him honor his Kryptonian heritage as well as his earthly one. If, as far as we're told, the most important people he knows from Krypton thought he should be a merciless warlord, the right thing for Superman to do is to spit on their grave and say Krypton deserved to explode. And that's kind of what happens in the movie. Early on, when the emotionless and soulless, but it's sad when they die, Superman robots help Supes get back into the fight, they put on the message spoken in Kryptonian from Jor-El and Laravel saying that it's soothing for Kal-El to hear his parents. They do the same thing at the end of the movie, but this time it's home videos from the Kent family. Again, this is a nice message about how Clark sees himself as human, and a nice little character arc to fill out at the end of the movie. But now that I'm writing this, I have to admit, that wasn't even a fully explored idea. When Lex reveals to everyone, including Kal-El, what the Kryptonian words in the message actually mean, and when everyone immediately believes it, I guess because they all trust experts and Lex had a bunch of them sign a letter or something, Clark is kind of bummed out, and we're sort of told he's having a huge crisis of self, wondering who he actually is. But this should be a way bigger moment, and we should have seen way more lead up to it. Why did Kal-El's biological parents play such a big role in shaping his sense of self? What changes for him when he finds out the truth? I know a lot of people are thinking this will be retconned, but this movie, as it stands, definitely presents the merciless House of El as the truth. Does he get a little more careless, a little harsher maybe? One of the main plot points in this movie is that Superman stopped a war, and that has people on edge and is causing a bit of an international incident. So around the midpoint of the movie, why don't we actually explore both of these ideas? We're told he destroyed military equipment and roughed up the president of Baravia for his aggression, and he gets called out just for doing that. After learning about what his biological parents' message says, have him hear about troop buildups and new preludes to war, and have him think, maybe I shouldn't just strictly save lives. Maybe these humans are primitive and in need of a firm hand to guide them. I don't know about the whole harem thing, but letting some corrupt Baravian oligarch keep on tormenting people, why shouldn't I stop this? Then have him fly to the palace in a dazzling and terrifying display of strength. People turn cameras on him saying it's more American aggression against the friendly nation of Baravia, but the Kryptonian Crusader says America doesn't want him here, but they can't stop him. And neither can anyone from Baravia. Some soldiers shoot, others just flee. The soldiers that would dare oppose the last survivor of Krypton get thrown into walls and a few broken bones, but they're not killed because Kal-El is still a wise and just leader. He breaks into the president's office. Secret servicemen fire handguns at Superman, and the bullets are caught between fingers and thrown right back into thighs or shoulders. The Baravian president cowers and pitifully tries to shame Kal-El into turning away his awesome might. Kal-El demands silence, and the mewling excuse for a leader turns to simple, quiet whimpering. Kal-El lists the crimes this imitation of a man has committed and asks for a single reason why he shouldn't execute him right now and take over Baravia in a one-man coup right now. The president grovels, hopeless and terrified. Perhaps he can help Kal-El with the transition. Superman looks around the office, looks at the president and the soldiers he's wounded. It was all so easy. Is this really what he wants? Could he actually live with himself if he kept walking down the path he's taken a few steps on? Why does it feel so wrong if it's the reason his parents sent him to Earth? Now, some people might not like this scene. They might hate to see Superman do anything morally questionable like this. I think this would really help tie things together, and the movie would be better off for it. Let me address some of those concerns. I've heard some say that this movie exists in some ways as a reactionary Superman movie to Man of Steel, with a Superman so kind, gentle, and morally upright, it starts to dip its toe into naivete and even childishness. You can't have a moment like I describe in a movie whose only purpose is to not be as dark as Man of Steel. If that is this movie's only purpose, then that's why it's a mediocre movie and you only get glimpses of greatness from. B. I would argue this scene already exists in this movie, it's just off screen. Remember, we're told that Superman did rough up the president and destroy a bunch of military hardware. His intentions were different at the time, sure, and intentions can make all the difference. But his actions in both situations would be pretty much the same. In fact, this scene would help to demonstrate that and would show the difference between Superman humbly acting as an actual peacekeeper, simply preventing war, by giving us a glimpse of what a proud Superman dictating how the world is supposed to work might actually look like. C. Not long after this is where Superman would go turn himself in to the government. In the movie we got, he just says he's doing it hoping that maybe it'll help him find Crypto the Superdog, and it sort of plays into the big blue Boy Scout persona that if there's a warrant out for him, he'll turn himself in. But turning himself in would mean a lot more if he actually had something he was ashamed of. There's plenty more to talk about with this movie, both good and bad, but I'll leave it there for now. People often say, oh, Superman is boring, he's too powerful, there's no stakes. Pat Rothfuss once said, there's so many things that can happen to your main character that are worse than dying. If the worst thing that can happen to your character is that they die, you're not writing an interesting character. Superman is known as one of, or perhaps the, most powerful character in fiction. But he's also known as the most moral. That means there are tons of conflicts, dilemmas, and ideas for a skilled writer to mine when writing a Superman story. We all have things in our life we wish we could have done better. We all have times that we could have done the right thing, but we decided not to, either because we rationalized away making the decision or didn't know at the time which of our options was the right thing. Almost all of us have had to choose between competing goods, deciding which option was the best when every option offered something. And I think we've almost all had times when we could have shown mercy, could have been gentle or kind to someone that deserved or didn't deserve it. In that sense, the character of Superman is a lot more relatable than he's given credit for. But he probably doesn't mind, because he's humble and doesn't need to be praised. He's just trying to do the right thing, like so much of the rest of humanity.